Poverty is one of those things that often gets overlooked by most people on a day-to-day basis. We've seen it so often that we sort of become desensitized towards it and don't really think about it much as a result. Our group wanted to try and find a way to use virtual reality, or VR, to allow people to physically experience what it's like to embody a person living in poverty, and hopefully bring forth how polarizing the decisions are to be made. Through this simulation, we wish to have people become more understanding and empathetic towards those whose lives have been constantly affected by this issue.
So we started by asking lots of questions. How do we convey the feeling of poverty through virtual reality, for instance? And how do we deliver a compelling narrative while also using activities that benefit from VR? Right? Like, what's going to separate our experience from other poverty-themed VR experiences? And after a bit of discussing, we knew one thing for certain. We should give the user a companion, someone to look out for. We figured if we can get the user to understand what it's like to be in poverty, then seeing someone else in a similar situation could compel them to help others. Be much more empathetic of their situation. It took many different iterations, sketching different ideas and coming up with a storyboard for the narrative. We had to keep going back and forth, asking what type of companion should it be, human or animal? And where do we want their story to go with the companion? What kind of choices can the user make that would affect both themselves and the companion in order to have the most impactful narrative? Eventually, we did find a solid foundation to build off of, which we can then use to start the development process in Unity.
We had a lot of ideas with how we wanted our story to go and quickly found ourselves with many scenes that we had to implement. We had to quickly condense our ideas and figure out what kind of message we wanted to make and how we were going to do it. The grocery store scene is what we made first because it introduces the user to our companion. The initial grocery scene only had a specific item that could be sold at the time. This was because we were just going to use it as an intro, but we realized that we weren't going to have enough time to implement the rest of the components that we wanted. So the next iteration that we showcased, we had a cash register system and made every item in the store interactable. We also put in our companion and our introduction scene to the companion, which helped us drive our message.
When it came time for our final simulation, we started our users off with Monopoly money. We decided this was the best way to simulate a world where the users would only have a set amount of income. This way, the narrative starts right even before they enter the VR. The second part of the setup is shown to the user after they're done their simulation, depending on the choices that they made. If they decided they were going to feed the dog, they'll be presented with the puppy. Whereas if they decided that they were going to keep the food for themselves as a character who was starving, they'll be presented with canned food. This acts as a sort of takeaway for the user. Our user testing allowed us to understand the glitches and flaws of our simulation. We found that our users were often getting confused on where to place the food on the cash register when it came time to actually make a purchase. They were also confused as to if they were successful because of the lack in system feedback. Users were also a little bit confused as to where they should be going, why they should be going there, and how much freedom they have in the world. If we were to go about this again, we would probably change the level design so users are able to be guided towards where they need to go in the simulation. This could include better highlighting of elements, a little bit more feedback, perhaps more movement to sort of guide them in the right direction and prevent any confusion that occurred in our simulation testing.